Hey everyone, T-Rob here with the Biz Pulse. Um, and I have another great show for you today. I've got Steph Whittle with me. She is the founder of HVAC Growth Labs. She's an author, all kinds of different stuff. And I don't want to talk about her too much because I want her to talk about herself. So I'm going to go ahead and bring her in and let's get to know her.
Hey, Tim.
Hey, Steph.
How's it going?
Good. Thanks for joining me. It's a pleasure to have you on, and I would love to just who's Steph? Tell me who you are and kind of what you do and your background, because I saw that you actually have a military background as well. So thank you for your service, by the way. But yeah, go ahead and tell us who you are and what you do.
Thanks. So yeah, I'm Steph Whittle. I'm the founder of HVAC Growth Lab. And what we do is, well, for those who are unfamiliar with the industry, HVAC stands for heating, ventilation, and air conditioning. And what we do is we help residential and commercial HVAC contractors to upgrade their marketing so they can grow profitably and focus on running a business that they love. And our mission is to help 500 of America's top HVAC contractors to double their business through profitable marketing by 2027.
Wow, that's a good goal. So tell me, how did you get into that field? Were you in it before, or I mean, tell me how that kind of niched down into that.
Yeah, so like you said, I got my start really in the military. So I went to college at West Point, and then, they say when it comes to active duty, they say once you do 10 years, you might as well stay in for 20. You hit 20, and then it's like that. At that point, you can retire and you can start to enjoy the benefits that you've earned over the years, through that sort of retirement setup. And right around the 10-year mark, I was talking to someone who was about to retire from the military, and he had spent the first half of his career in infantry, second half in special forces, and his family had this business, and he was getting ready to just get out of the military and go transition right into his family business. Mm-hmm. And I thought that sounds great. I was really happy for him, and he seemed really pumped about it. And then he asked me, what's your plan? What are you going to do when you get out? And I thought, well, that's still 10 years away. And I hadn't really thought about it. And, he had said to me, you need to have some sort of backup plan in case, things don't work out or things change or whatever. And you got to start thinking now about what you're going to do when you get out. And so I started thinking about it, and I realized I really needed to think that way and have more long-term thinking. And in terms of personal growth, I had the opportunity to do a lot of really cool stuff. I had a very unique career while I was in it was just unbeatable career trajectory and opportunities that I was able to pursue. But I think, I felt myself starting to get to the point where I was starting to get comfortable. And when you get comfortable, that's when you kind of stop growing. Right. And I just realized I need to start thinking about other things. What can I do to start developing myself on the side? And, in parallel to what I was doing. So I really dug into copywriting and marketing and starting to just kind of dig into that and self-teach. And what ended up happening is I started just acquiring some clients on the side just as a freelancer. Mm-hmm. And I started developing experience that way. And then we kind of evolved into an agency when people started wanting more and more than just one particular specialized type of service. And then, by that point, I looked at everything and I said, well, I think probably it's a good time to get out of the military now. And, I was only a couple years away from retirement, and people were like, what do you do? You're crazy, but it ended up being the right decision. And so I transitioned out. And then people always ask me, how'd you get into the HVAC side of things? Because it's a very, niche specific focus. And it came down to advice from a business coach in 2019. He said, if you really want to scale and you really want to grow and you want to be the best at what you do, the way to do that is to niche down, to focus on one industry vertical and get really good at delivering results for that industry vertical. And then you'll start to build a name for yourself, and you'll be able to systematize things and get it really dialed in. And through word of mouth, you can really expand that way. And so, when I looked at all the different industries I'd been working with up until that point, HVAC was probably, it was up there at the top. One of my favorite customers to work with, favorite business model, favorite industry. So at that point, then we pivoted and really initially we're focusing on lead generation, right? Mm-hmm. So HVAC companies, they want more install leads. They want those high ticket sales, those total system replacements for your home. That could be somewhere between $15,000 and $25,000 per system replacement on average. And so like, that's the kind of stuff that they're really interested in. But when I realized that, like when we were just doing pure lead generation, that they needed more than that. Like, because we would display Facebook ads and Google ads, and homeowners would see it, but then they would still go scope out the company and they want to see what the company's all about. So we wanted to make sure that across the board, they're making a great first impression. So that's when we went from lead gen to much greater complexity, which is full service local marketing. So that's been the journey.
Very cool. Well, thank you for sharing that. So like you just talked about it, and I know I see it a lot in the things that I do is branding's a big deal, right? And people sometimes don't think about that. They think about, hey, let's generate a bunch of leads, but they don't understand that people are going and looking at them and judging them off how they look, just like they judge us, right? So
Yeah.
is that something like when you got into the HVAC that you really saw like, okay, people really need help on the branding side of things?
They do. And it's funny, even nowadays when I get started with a new contractor who's coming on board to work with us, one of the first things we do is we kind of scope out the competition in the local area, because we want to see what are other companies doing. Yeah. And it's very rare that I find someone who's in the HVAC industry who's doing it right. I land on these websites and I'm like, man, if they knew what this is costing them to have a website that looks like this, a lot of them really understand now. They all kind of understand the power of reviews, like having really good Google reviews. It's funny. We were at the AHR Expo up in Atlanta. It's the biggest trade show in the HVAC industry every year. So like we were one of the exhibitors and I gave a presentation there. But it's funny, any contractor, like, and mostly in the residential side, they come up to me, they'd introduce themselves to me. They would tell me a little bit about what they do. And then they would jump right into telling me about their Google reviews. It's like, we have this many reviews. We have this average star rating. So like they understand that now. It's just now getting them to understand the other stuff and how it all works together.
Yeah. I mean, at least they're starting to get reviews, because I come from the service business myself. I owned and scaled multiple service businesses, so it took me a while to even understand how important reviews were. Right? Like I wasn't pushing my technicians into getting reviews, and I'm like, why am I not? Because that's just like people look at that, and they look at it more and more each day now. So,
yeah.
So how long have you had HVAC Growth Lab then?
Really, we started at the end of 2019. And
Okay.
so it was like right before the whole COVID thing went down, which was really interesting because there was so much uncertainty at that point. And I don't know if you remember, like people were really reluctant about bringing home services into their home and, having anything to do with strangers or, so I was concerned, and across the industry, everyone was concerned, like, where is this going? What's going to happen? So I thought, oh, maybe I pivoted at the wrong time, like this is maybe not the right industry to be in, but it ended up being fine. And really just through relationships and word of mouth that year, I was able to start acquiring clients that way. And I mean, like, I think every single client that we brought on that year, we still have with us. So
that's great.
Going on 3 years now. That's really good.
Yeah. Yeah. Especially in the marketing industry, it's so much turnover. They're like, oh, it's cheaper over here. I'm going to go try this. So
yeah,
you're definitely doing something right.
Yeah. I think it really comes down to the relationship, and just kind of building that trust. And I think the companies that we work with understand that we really do care about getting them the best results and taking care of them. So I think that resonates with them, and that means a lot. And I just try to take that mindset and that spirit into any sort of conversation I have with someone who's interested in working together, because I want to make sure that resonates with them. I want to make sure it's the right fit. We don't take just anybody on to work with us. We really want to make sure that this is going to be a successful partnership.
Yeah. So I want to touch on your military background, and how do you see a lot of what you've learned in the military that you're bringing into your business?
That's such an interesting question. I really like that question. So when I started out, first of all, where I went to college it's a military school, right? So everything there is super regimented, and it's just a different a different college experience than a lot of people, go through. So from there, you kind of develop this mindset of kind of a no defects mindset, right? Like there's no room for mistakes. There's no room for errors. And that's really hard to pivot away from that. And then throughout your entire military career, then like you just kind of keep building upon that, like there's no room for error. Like you can't fail. And then when you get into business, it's all about failing. Like that's like, you have to be deliberate about it. Yeah. I have one of my mentors, said to me, like the best approach to sales calls is, or even to prospecting, to like cold calling, is collecting no's, because if you collect enough no's, eventually you're going to get a yes. And that's a totally different mindset that I've had to pivot away from that. And with the military, it's very bureaucratic. Mm-hmm. Entrepreneurship, opposite end of the spectrum. Like there's no manual on anything. There's no regulation. There's no standard operating procedure. You got to build it all yourself, which is great. I mean, for me, that's like it's been the ultimate personal development, because I've really had to do a complete 180 from the mindset I've had for like the past 20 years of my life. In terms of, though, I got to tell you, so I got out of, when I graduated, and then I went to flight school, and I, like the first half of my career, I was a helicopter pilot.
Wow.
And it's, again, there's no room for mistakes.
Right.
Like you kind of go into this mindset every day, like you're 10 seconds or 10 feet away from fatality, so everything is like buy the checklist, buy the book, like even though you have everything memorized, like it's everything, you cross all your T's and dot all your I's, very meticulous. And everything's, it really is literally like every day, even when you're back home training, it's life or death. So taking that mentality into business has, I think, it can be tough for people to understand that. if they're not used to working with you, and they don't understand why, like your brain just kind of works that way. And it's like we got to get this done. We got to get it done now. And it needs to be done right. I think just having to sort of kind of dial that back and just, realize that it's not life or death. Like we want to do a great job. We want to be excellent. We like how we do anything is how we do everything. Like I still live by that principle, but I think just having patience and understanding like what really does need to be done now, and what's not worth pulling an all-nighter for, just kind of managing that, because like when you're working with people are your greatest asset, and like leadership's important, and so there's got to be a give and take there.
Yeah, no, that's a great answer. I mean, I'm sure you're probably a great leader, because it's nice that you have that background, because there's a lot of leaders that I've been around or actually have worked for that don't have any structure at all, right? It's just like freelance, nothing ever gets done. And so it's nice that you're trying to balance it. I understand that, because I'm kind of the same way as you. Like, let's go. Everything's got to be on this checklist. So it's been especially as an entrepreneur, you really have to check yourself, right? You're just like, okay, maybe I need to scale back a little bit. Yeah. So cool. So I want to talk to you about, I mean, you wrote a book, and I looked, and it's like, I mean, it's one of the Amazon #1 bestsellers, or it was. I mean, like, really cool. Where did that come from? Did you just decide like, I want to write a book?
Well, a couple of things. So yeah, it's HVAC Customers for Life, how to turn $25 leads into $25,000 raving fans in 90 days or less. So a couple, well, there's some background behind the book. So first of all, I've always been into books. I've always been a reader. And I find that a lot of the clients I work with are too. A lot of them prefer audiobooks over, reading books, but like they're business owners and they want to grow. And a lot of times, like you can get some really good gems out of just one book that can change the entire trajectory of what you're trying to do. And can offer some shortcuts, like huge return on investment, really, when you look at things. But what I found is there were problems that my clients were having when when we first started working together, that like I could not find a book to give them that would help them with these things. And a lot of times, just in general, in the contractor business, and you would know this, like when you need customers and you're first starting out, or even if you've been established for a while and you're looking to grow, like how do I get more customers? That's one of the biggest questions and one of the toughest questions really to find answers to sometimes. And a lot of times these guys just don't know where to begin, especially when they're just getting started, they're venturing out on their own. It's like, like in these Facebook groups with these contractors, you'll see all these interesting conversations. Like someone will post a question. They'll be like, what marketing should I be doing? Like, I just got started. What should I be doing?
Yeah.
And people will post answers. They'll be like billboards, or they'll say like newsletters, in your church's newsletter, like, put some, just like you see all this random stuff.
Right.
And it's like, well, how do we really distill that down and just start with like the basics, like the minimum effective dose of marketing? You're just starting out. What is that? So I really wanted to kind of dig into that in the book, even for, people who wouldn't be ready to work with me yet. That's enough to help them figure out how to focus their time, their energy, their resources, and then how to expand that over time. So I really wanted to get that down into writing so I could share that with everybody. And then, the book transitions into how do you then, like when you start getting into marketing and you're investing and you're spending money on ads and, like this is turning into a monthly financial commitment. How do you then start getting a return on that investment? What's the best way to do it? Because, a lot of these guys don't even realize sometimes like you just got to focus on the basics. Like when the phone rings, you pick it up and you answer. Like, yeah, there's a chance it's going to be a solicitor, but there's also a really good chance it's going to be a $25,000 system replacement. You don't know. So you got to pick up the phone. You got to be polite and friendly and professional and develop the conversation that way. And so just kind of covering those basics, it's up to the more advanced stuff. And for a lot of these guys, they're overlooking some really low-hanging fruit opportunities, which is their existing customer list.
Mm-hmm.
It is actually like 6 or 7 times more expensive to acquire one new customer than it is to just resell to an existing customer. And the reason for that is because you already did all the work to acquire them. They already bought from you. They already like you. They know you. They trust you. They'll buy from you again. You just got to ask, and a lot of these guys just forget to kind of keep that relationship going, that conversation going. And so they put all this energy into acquiring new customers and they forget about like the rest of it, just keeping that dialogue going. And so I find that the HVAC companies who do that the best are the ones who just knock it out of the park. And when it's time for them to exit, they have the highest valuation because whoever wants to acquire the company says like, okay, well, you're getting 60% of your revenues coming from repeat business. Like that just means you're far more valuable than the company that's still like 90% on first time lead acquisition,
Yeah. Yeah, no, great advice there, Steph, because I think people forget that to reach out to their current, clients. They kind of forget about them. But, referrals are way cheaper to grab than going out and spending a bunch of money on ads or whatever. So great advice there. So tell me, how long did it take you to write that book?
Yeah, well, great insight. And also I'd add to that, Tim, that applies to pretty much every industry. So I know like you have a very diverse audience here, but unless you're like a divorce lawyer or you're in like the mortuary business, and even in some cases, you never know. But like for everybody else, you've got customers that you can continue to keep as customers and re-engage that way. So just think about those opportunities. But in terms of to answer your question about how long it took me to write the book, I would say that it took me kind of 3 months to get in gear and then took me like 6 weeks to really nug it out. So
nice.
A lot of times it's just kind of taking everything that's up in your brain and then putting it on the paper in a way that it makes sense to other people, that they could read it and do something with it. So,
Sure.
yeah.
Sure. So, in regards to, and I'm sure, and I wanted to touch on the book a little bit more if I could, but, I want people to understand it's more than just the HVAC, right? You probably got stuff in there that would go to any service business or any business in general. I'm sure there's a lot of techniques and ideas in there that would probably help people.
Yeah, for sure. Actually, my editor, I did hire an editor. I feel like she probably didn't. I don't think she had too much work to do. I think my capitalization kind of drove her crazy because like all my chapter headings and stuff were like I come from a copywriting background, so like it's just different capitalization rules, and she was just like, I think it just for her that was. But she did make a comment to me. She said her sister and her sister's husband have been running like a service-based business for 30 years. They're about ready to sell, and she said if they were staying in, I would definitely make sure that they read this book. So yeah, I would say it's like 90% of this is like I could take this book and repurpose it and just make it a general book about local business, local service-based marketing. And then the other 10% is the nuance.
Gotcha.
Specific to HVAC.
Yeah, perfect. So when you were looking at niching down into an industry, I know you talked about it a little bit, but how did you pick the HVAC out of so many industries? Was there a connection there at all, or you just kind of liked what you saw, or what?
Not really. I mean, in terms of connections, I think it was. I mean, I had connections, and I like the industry. I liked my experience with the industry up until that point. Sure. But like in terms of having a background, it's like people ask me like, have you ever owned a HVAC company, or were you a technician before? Or when I was in Atlanta, someone asked me like, are you married to an HVAC person? Like, what happened? It's like, well, no, really, it was just a matter of like, who were we getting the best results for? And for me, with lead generation, it was just, I like big wins. I like to get big wins quickly, and it's just like, man, we can launch a Facebook ad campaign, and within the next like 24 to 72 hours, we could start getting leads in right away. And if these guys have a pretty dialed in sales process, like by the end of the week, they're getting a positive ROI. So like for me, that was just, it's like, it just felt like T-ball, like in terms of just the whole marketing thing. But as we started expanding and getting a little more complex in how we do things, and like beyond just lead generation, now we're doing full service. I just love the business model, because you've got the high ticket sales up front, but then you just keep that customer relationship going over time. And I just love the way that all works together. So I love the industry. I love the personalities. The contractors that I work with are awesome. I don't have one client that works with us that I just don't think the world of. I just think they're so great. So
that's great. That's great. So, I know you guys generate leads, but are you helping people with the back end of like the sales process in general of like, because I deal with a lot of new startups and they go, I need 7,000 leads. And then I go, well, how are you going to take on 7,000? You know what I mean? It's like, they don't think about you got to have the people to do it. And you got to answer the phone, because I grew a business in a rural area because I answered the phone and the other companies didn't. I mean, the truth be told, that was how easy it was.
Yeah. That's amazing. No, you bring up a good point, because when I first got started with like the HVAC industry, and I was trying to bring on more clients initially, I was cold calling. I had a list of like a couple thousand contractors, just going on the list and calling, and 3 out of 5 wouldn't pick up the phone.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it was because maybe it was coming from an out of area code sometimes or whatever, but yeah, 3 out of 5. And so I just thought, man, that it's a big problem right off the bat. And that's not unique to the HVAC industry. That's that's everybody. But except for the really good guys like you, who just knock it out of the park because you're just showing up. It's like you just 80% of success is just showing up. I think that's what Woody Allen said. So, yeah, but we do, to answer your question, in addition to the lead generation, I think that's one of the things that sets us apart is we look at the entire life cycle of a new customer, like from the time they come in as a new lead all the way up to the time they're ready to sell their house and move on and no longer be a customer. Like we look at that whole life cycle, and we build all the campaigns and automations around that to support those ongoing communications and requests for referrals and service reminders, and start the conversation about different upsells and cross sells. We do all that for them to really maximize what they're doing.
Oh, that's great then. So you're helping them with the whole package, really, like educating them on what they need to do. Because the truth be told, this stuff, like generating the leads is really not the hard part, right? It's what you do with those leads. I mean, that's like make it or break it for any company. Like, it's sad that you said when you started cold calling 3 out of 5, because it hasn't changed, and it's in every industry, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand it. Like, why don't you answer the phone? Anyway, sorry, I don't want to get off on that.
But that's a great question, and I don't know what the answer is. Like maybe awareness or.
Yeah, I think what I've seen, and especially in the service field, is that they're really good at service. Like they can go put a system in and fix anything you want, but they don't think about the business side of things, right? It's like, I think they get overwhelmed at times as well. But anyway.
Well, to your point, I mean, that's how everyone pretty much gets started in business, is as a great technician.
Yep.
And then they say, I'm going to go out on my own. I'm going to hang my own shingle. I'm going to start getting customers, and then I'm going to, do my own thing. And what they realize is, and I'm speaking about myself too, like running a business and growing a business is its own skill set. And it's a skill set that requires wearing a lot of hats. And some people just never really grow into that. And I think part of it's just not knowing any better. And for me, I've really had to lean on coaching and mentorship that way to understand, because otherwise I was telling the dark, like I come from a totally different background. A lot of folks who are really successful, like in the marketing industry, who, start an agency or run an agency, like they'll have a sales background, like, 10, 20 years in sales. And, I got out of the military and I was like, well, what's a sales process? Like I've heard of this, but I'm not really sure how it works, so I've really had to kind of learn that. But yeah, you're right. Like the business side of things is a whole nother skill set. So, I tell these guys, like, don't be hard on yourself if, like for not knowing it, but now it's time to understand like what, how to do this and what to do next. So,
yeah, for sure. So what's one of the biggest challenges you face in your role that maybe on a daily or a weekly that you probably didn't know that you'd be facing?
Yeah. So I would say, like, for us, because I have like 8 contractors who work for me.
Okay.
And we're bringing on more. And it's a couple of things. So it's finding the right talent, because you can find all sorts of people who will tell you they can run Facebook ads or they can design social media posts or whatever. But when you really when you look at what they're doing, there's really only a few who really know it and really know it well and can do a good job. So just being able to identify that kind of talent and bring them on board. And then like the quality control side of things, because there's so much complexity, even for something as simple as just running a simple Facebook lead generation campaign, just like everything that goes into it. Just the messaging, understanding the audience, the targeting, the split testing, the optimization, like, just for one single component of a client acquisition strategy. And then when you take that and you're trying to build it across the board for multiple channels, it really starts to get complex. So I would say for me, identifying talent, bringing talent on board, making sure we're all on the same page, outlining expectations too, because I have a kind of a certain vision of what I think right looks like. And a lot of people, like, they're willing to learn it and adapt to it. You just have to make it really simple and clear for them to understand. And once you've got those expectations laid out, then let's roll with it. Like that's the only way then to grow and progress and to get better. But yeah, there's a lot of complexity. So the whole project management side of things, like I've done project management before, but I would say this is pretty intricate, and we're looking for ways to always do it better. And like quality control for me is number one, because I never want to have something come up, like something be broken or have a problem that the client identifies before I do. Like I want to make sure that we see it first and we like put the kibosh on it before the client ever has a chance to say anything. They probably won't notice half the time, like it's taken care of. We don't have to, like talk about it or anything. It's done. It wasn't even an issue. And the other 50% of the time, I'll be like, hey, this is this is what's going on right now. We're working through it. Just want to let you know, give you a heads up. And I think that builds a lot of trust. People just know we're being transparent. And when something arises, we take care of it.
Yeah. So a good question I wanted to ask you, because, and I know you deal with it because I deal with it as well, is when you have a client that, I don't know how any other way to say it, that think they know more than you do, right? Oh, I could run those ads and get the same thing. And I know you're laughing because you've seen them or talked to them, or maybe you have some now. But how do you handle that? How is it? Because I know there's a lot of people that are going to watch this that go, oh yeah, I've got clients just like that. How do I handle it?
Well, my first answer is sometimes it's not a good fit. So like we'll identify that in our first call. I remember talking to an AC contractor a while back, and he had reached out because he just wanted help with, like, he runs his own Google ads. He's doing $7 million a year. Okay. And he's got an HVAC division. He's got like a water mitigation, like a,
Mm-hmm.
like he cleans up like when people have water issues in their home and stuff. He does, the mold stuff, all that. And he was like, he runs his own Google ads, and he was like, I just need someone to do the creative. I need someone to do like the graphics for like the retargeting or and it was, so we had this conversation. I just asked him like, how much time a day are you spending on running your Google ads campaigns? And he was like, oh, well, about an hour a day. It's like, you're running a $7 million company. You're spending an hour a day doing your own Google ads. And I'm thinking to myself, if we were to like dig into his account and see what was going on, like, I know there's probably so much there that he could be doing that he doesn't even know. And so he's just, how much is it costing him in business by trying to save money and do it himself? And I understand, like, there's a peace of mind there. Like, I have to fight the urge, like, to want to just do everything myself because I know I'll get it done, know. And he probably has that mentality too. And he's probably been burned in the past by other companies who promised something and then just, they just dropped the ball or whatever. I get it. But man, that's time he could be spending with his family or doing hobbies or something else. It's like, gosh, but I just realized like that probably wasn't going to be a fit, because I think no matter what we did for him, there was always going to be kind of that looking over the shoulder and, what's going on with that. But it's funny because kind of a different variation of that is the business owner who like has his office assistant doing marketing stuff. And then like he wants to work with you, but he doesn't want to talk to you. He wants the office manager to talk to you because like they understand marketing apparently. And then he wants to just kind of outsource the whole decision-making process. And I actually had a conversation like this like 2 weeks ago, and they're having all sorts of challenges. And they had like put all this money into trying to expand to these new areas. And he's putting his office manager / executive assistant / wears 7 other hats in charge of like the marketing. And it's like, no, like,
yeah.
Even if he brought me into his company full time and said, Steph, you be our marketing person, for one person to do all of that by themselves, it's just an unrealistic expectation, even with as much background experience as I have. And so to expect someone who really doesn't know anything about this kind of stuff and wants to do well, but has, a whole bunch of other stuff. So at the end of the day, the conversation was like, well, we can't afford to work with you right now. It's like, well, yeah, it's probably not a good fit anyway, Yeah. So you just have to kind of look at it like that.
Yeah. Well, thank you for sharing that. It's funny because in the small business world, you deal with that a lot where you kind of have this middle person, right? And you're like, you go for, okay, I need to ask you this question. And then they have to go to somebody else. And it's extremely hard. It's a service business. And then when they don't know anything, it's really extremely hard. I'm dealing with that right now with, and hopefully someone's not watching, but anyway, no, I'm kidding. But the person that I'm dealing with really doesn't know a lot about marketing, right? And they don't understand even the questions that I ask. So then it's like days later, I get an answer back, and then it kind of pushes everything. So it's interesting. It's tough at times, but that's the way of the world, right? Because really small business, they always have their right-hand person, right? Like, oh, Cindy can help you, or whoever. So it's interesting. I'm glad you mentioned that, because we do see it a lot.
But that's how we learn to set parameters, just through these conversations. So for me, in the past, I've been open to having any conversation with anyone, because that's just how I learn,
Mm-hmm.
And even if it's not someone who I could really work with, or someone who, like, it wouldn't even make sense for them to work with us, just having the conversation, understanding where they're coming from, and that sort of mindset, you start to learn. And then when you have more and more conversations, you realize who is a good fit and who's not a good fit. And I find for us that kind of that perfect fit is, it's those companies who, like, they've crossed the $1.5 million mark, and they're shooting for 5. Like they want to get to 3 to 5 within the next 2 to 3 years. And because it's like the owner's still, like, he's still on the field, his head is in the game. Like he still wants, like, he wants to make things happen. He wants to he wants to have the relationship with us rather than outsourcing it to someone else, delegating it to someone else. And so it's still like really hands-on. I really love that. But they've already crossed 1.5. So they're at the point where they're established. They know what they're doing. Like they've proven like they can run a business and take care of customers. So that's like the perfect like starting point that I've kind of identified. And beyond, like when you see people getting beyond like the $6 to $7 million mark, if they haven't already been working with us, it starts to get to the point where you do see like that delegation and that's just, for me, for us, it's like, it's all about the relationship. And so that's not as, I just say it's not as fun and rewarding, and it's just kind of a different dynamic. But you know, what's interesting along that vein is after this expo that we did up in Atlanta, I was like overbooked with calls after that, which is a great problem to have. But I think part of it was we had like some software issues with the scheduling, where it's like we didn't even think about it, and suddenly I have like 7-8 calls scheduled like every day for like 3 weeks straight. It was a little too much. But the cool thing about having everything so like condensed like that is it really gave me a great 30,000 foot view of the industry, because I was just going from back-to-back calls, talking with all sorts of different owners and all sorts of different, phases of growth and things like that. And I really started noticing trends that I haven't noticed before. But what I have noticed is like the folks who are doing over 1.5, over 2 million a year show up differently than the ones who are doing over or doing under $1 million. And actually, like, which is funny, is like if people didn't show up for a call, even with like our reminders and all these, and we talked face to face and this whole thing, even with all that, the ones who like didn't show up to the calls, they were all like doing under 750 a year.
That's interesting.
And I would be curious to see what you think, Tim. I have my theory too, and I think some people might play devil's advocate and say, well, they're in the truck, or they're crawling around in the attic. Like, of course they're like, they haven't crossed 750 a year yet. They're still doing stuff and they're busy. That's why they can't get on a call. But I think like if you want to get to that 5 million mark, you got to start showing up like you're already there, and then the results will follow. So, I mean, what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's probably a little bit of both, but I would probably lean towards the side of that's probably why they're not at that level yet, to be completely honest. Because if they don't show up to, like a call with you or whoever, then who else are they doing that to? Are they answering their phone? That's kind of mindset I have, and you probably are the same way. Like, hey, why you're at 750 and not 2 million? Like that's what you want to say, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And even like after, if they don't show up, like I'll send a courtesy email, because I just want to show people I'm doing my diligence. So I was there, I was on the call. Sorry I missed you,
Yeah.
Let us know if we can do anything else for you. Like, no offer to reschedule or anything like that. But, if they want to open the conversation, sorry, something came up, like that's fine. Like, stuff happens. I understand. I'm a compassionate, understanding person, but yeah, no, I think you're totally right. And, what's interesting? I don't know if you've heard this. They did a study years ago in the HVAC industry. And what they found is 9 out of 10 installations, like residential installations, are not done to manufacturer standard.
9 out of 10.
9 out of 10. Yep. So that means 9 out of 10 AC/furnace replacements in people's homes are not done properly. Whether it's like, it could be something just little, the way the appliance itself was installed, or it could be like it's a total mismatch, based on like everything that's going on in the home with airflow and all of that, just like the wrong system for the wrong demands. 9 out of 10. So like that means that like if you're calling around for contractors, HVAC contractors, and you need a new AC system or you need your furnace replaced, there's only a 1 in 10 chance that it's going to get done right.
Goodness, you're scaring me.
Yeah, I know. So like for me, it's like I really feel this ethical, moral responsibility that like when I'm talking to these guys and they're interested in working together, like I want to make sure that they're the 1 in 10 and not the 9 in 10. But no one's going to tell you like we're the ones who don't do it right. No one's going to say that. But I think you have to look at the other indicators. Like do they show up for calls? How do they show up for calls?
Yeah.
I don't mean to be like this could sound kind of creepy, but you know what? I have a property manager up in North Carolina. He kind of manages some rentals for me. He's a retired Green Beret. and
Uh-huh.
he literally like psychologically profiles people like they, yeah, like when he's looking at prospects as tenants for the properties that he's managing, like he'll look at their tires, like he'll look at the tire treads, and it's like, well, it's a fancy expensive car, but like the tires are bald. Like to him, he's looking at all these different indicators, trying to figure out if this is a responsible person or not before he even gives them a chance to submit an application.
Yeah.
And I totally understand why he does that. And I think he probably can't help himself because he's picked up on so many patterns over time. And I think just, when you're in business over time, you start picking up on these kinds of patterns too. And you learn like who's a better fit, and you just want to focus on those guys.
Yeah, for sure. Wow. I need that guy's number because that's a perfect property manager there.
Yeah, he's awesome. I love him.
Yeah. So what's one of your favorite productivity hacks that you do, or maybe something that you do every day that entrepreneurs should be looking at doing?
Gosh, that's such a good question. And you know what? This is something I'm always wrestling with because I'm always kind of experimenting with different stuff. And I found for me, it's so easy, especially like right now, we're overwhelmed, which is great. Like with new business coming in and onboarding clients, and like there's other stuff that we're developing right now. It's just, it takes so much time and attention, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
But there's these day-to-day things that I want to make sure that I'm doing. And if I don't keep track of it, like days will turn into weeks, and I'll realize like I haven't, done this thing that I've been wanting to do every day, and it's been like a month, so I literally, like if I literally want to hold myself accountable and keep those little non-urgent but super important things, make sure those get done every day, I literally have to print out like a checklist and tape it to my wall and make sure every day I'm checking off the boxes. And that's the only way really that I've been able to kind of hold myself accountable when stuff gets crazy.
Mm-hmm.
But you know what? There's another thing that I want to share with everybody, because one thing I noticed with, especially like startups and new entrepreneurs and people who really like, you're going through that startup phase of business where you really are grinding all the time.
Yeah.
A lot, like the first thing that goes a lot of times is like just taking care of yourself, and it's like, cause you just don't, you just can't like give yourself permission to go like take an hour and like just go to the gym. Like it feels selfish. It feels counterproductive, all that stuff. But what I've realized is the more that I do that kind of stuff, the less sleep I need. And so, like spending an hour at the gym and then maybe like walking an hour in the evening turns into like needing 3 or 4 hours less sleep each night. So I'm actually buying myself, it's like, I'm buying myself more time back from that. And I feel better and all that. So just something to think about. I think everyone just needs to give yourself permission to do that kind of stuff and not forget about just make time during the day and just go do it. And I have to remind myself too, because it's so easy for me to just, I will just keep going until, I'm so tired I can't even stand up, and then I forget about that other stuff. And it's like,
Yeah.
I need to be better about that. What do you think?
Well, I mean, wellness is a huge thing. It's funny. I had a heart attack on Halloween, believe it or not.
Oh my God, you're so young.
I know. And I walk over 3 miles a day. I work out every day. It's just a hereditary. My family all had heart issues, but it really woke me up, like what's more important in life? Is it working all the freaking time and stressing about it, or enjoying family and exercising, which again, I was already doing and thought I was pretty healthy, but I would definitely. So when people talk about it, I mean, wellness is a big thing for me, like, take a break, turn the computer off and go outside, and breathe some air, because people like what we're doing right now, they get stuck behind a computer all day and they forget about the real world. So it definitely hit home for me that what you said, because it's something I'm working on for sure.
Oh my gosh. Was that like this past Halloween?
Yeah. It was funny because I live in Texas, but I went to Colorado. I used to live in Colorado and was hunting. And I just got really chilled, right? Like freezing cold, just chattering. And then I could just feel my right arm just totally it was the weirdest thing ever. And I was 45 miles from the closest hospital. So it was a interesting time. Let me put it that way, but I'm doing good. Everything's good. I mean, we put 3 stents in. But yeah, I'm good to go.
That's amazing that you survived that.
Oh, I know. Yeah. Thank you, God, for sure.
Yeah. Well, that means your time ain't up yet. Like you still got stuff to do. You're like,
That's right, man. That's right. I'm busy. So I'm still grinding and doing it.
So looking back on that, like, can you point to like things that you realize like, oh man, like it was these lifestyle things that could have, that probably led to that, or I don't know, things that you do over again if you could.
Maybe, maybe eating better, maybe was a factor. And I did drink, but not like crazy, but I'm not drinking period now, nothing. So I would think maybe those two things. And maybe, knowing that it kind of ran in my family stuff is probably something I should have been going to the doctor and having them check.
Sure.
Before it got to the point of, like, oh, hey, you're all clogged up and your heart's not working. Like, oh, okay. But I never saw anything coming. I didn't have any signs.
Right.
Because I was doing everything I always did. And I'm like, and then it just hit. So kind of weird.
Do you think there was stress involved in that too? Maybe sleep deprivation?
Yeah, I'm definitely, I've always carried stress. So if I don't exercise or do something, I keep everything inside, so it could have been a factor for sure.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Yeah, that's a good reminder to everybody. Like when I was stationed in North Carolina, it was like a pretty high speed, but it was a unit. We had a lot going on. There's a lot of moving pieces of parts. And we had like 3 heart attacks in just the matter of, I think it was like over the course, maybe a year or two. I don't remember, but yeah, I think it was like 3 heart attacks. And it was, it was like, they're all majors, I think. So we're talking like guys in their 30s, not like, these are young people.
Yeah.
And they're in good shape too. Like, running every day, rucking, like doing all this active stuff. And yeah, it's just, you're right. It's like, don't take anything for granted. You only got one body. You gotta take care of it,
Yeah, for sure. For sure. I didn't want to get off on me, so I apologize for that.
Who knows? We could have saved a couple lives, so it's always worth
you never know. Yeah, hopefully some people are listening. So change your lifestyle. No, I'm kidding. So we have we talked about your book, and we're getting to the closing. So I know thank you for your time, but do you have other books that you would recommend that people would take a look at or that you enjoy?
Yeah. So the first book, I love Grant Cardone's stuff. So his 10X rule, I think, is a great book. And it's funny. I've attended a couple of his sales huddles in the mornings. Like every day his sales team does a sales huddle, and it's like this orchestrated thing. It's really cool. And one thing they always do, I think they take his 10X rule book and someone opens the book and like lands on a paragraph and reads it to everybody. And, and there's always like the times I've been there, it's like whatever they pick out, it was always like a really cool passage. And I think, and his sales guys, like they read that book so many times over and over again. And every time they read it, they find something new. And every time they read it, they're a different person than they were, 3 months ago. So they get something else out of it. So it's a good book that just really, focuses on like taking massive action. And it always takes more effort sometimes. Well, I shouldn't say sometimes. It always takes more effort than you think. It always takes longer than you expect. But then Grant says it's always going to be, better in the end than you ever could have anticipated or asked for. So I think that's a great book, great message there. And you know what? There's a great book that's called Talk Triggers. It's written by Jay Baer. And I saw him speak at a branding conference in Vegas, which actually, what's funny is the whole branding conference is really about customer experience. That's what branding is nowadays. It's customer experience. But he wrote a book called Talk Triggers, and it's basically like the things you can do to set yourself apart that generates word of mouth and makes you remarkable. And I think it's a great book that's got cool ideas from all over, all sorts of different industries. And that's actually a book that like when we send out our initial welcome care package to our new clients, like I include that in there too. So that's a fun one. And my book's good too. So
yeah,
book 3, that's a good start.
Cool deal. We're always try to push people towards some books and some reading because, the more you learn, the more you move forward, So, yeah. So, Steph, I don't want to keep you any longer. I want to just thank you for your time. And I will have all your contact info in the description of the video. So if anybody wants to reach out to you, what's the best option to reach you? Is it the website or what?
Yeah, you can go to our website. That's probably the best way. And we've got a couple cool freebies on there. Also too, if you get the book, we have in here, it's like our Customers for Life toolkit. You can download that, and then like we get your email address and your contact info, but then you have a direct line to me that way. So that's probably the best way.
Okay. So, and your book is for sale on Amazon. I just want to remind everybody. So if you're looking for a great read and in the service industry period, or really any business, it's going to definitely give you some insights on what you should be doing and not doing. So Steph, I just want to thank you for your time again.
Thank you, Tim.
Hopefully I didn't miss any questions or something you wanted to talk about, but it's been a pleasure, and I'm sure I'll have you back on down the road.
I'd love to. I think we covered it all. I loved your questions. It was a great conversation. Really had a lot of fun with you today. So I hope your audience gets a lot out of it. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Have a great one.
You too.
All right. So that was Steph Whittle with HVAC Growth Lab. And if you're in the service industry, you probably want to grab her book, because I can tell you just from a conversation, she definitely knows what's going on. She's going to help you with not only generating leads, but what you do with those leads. And I think that's a missed step of people that try to grow, but they don't have the inside structure or the back end to really take on leads and understand how the sales process should go. So that's it for me. Thank you for tuning in to the Biz Pulse, and I will see you next time. Same place, same channel.